All right, so we have the final segment, which is about the future of fintech. And we're very, very lucky to have three amazing people to lead this with us. And then we have three amazing people who are the entrepreneurs who are in the front line, who are actually out there in the cold face doing stuff. And their challenges, and we need to be addressing them also. The Future of Fintech channel is something that we've already started working on. Mirna and I, we collaborated and have come together as partners on this a few months ago, and then the summer came, and now we're back again. This is what we've developed and some of the work that we've done on the fintech side, so just to share with you. This is Fintech Galaxy, a company that was launched by Mirna. So this baby is already born. Now it's a little toddler. It's trying to sort of get out there. The new season has just started, so we need to be working on this. Why is fintech so important? I mean, these are just some core facts to build context. $100 billion worth of disruption. 90% of existing bank jobs would be lost in the next 10 years. 90%. 600 million new jobs needed. 3.5 billion unbanked people need to get engaged in some way, shape, or form, and 2.2 trillion by 2020 in terms of job losses. So when you look at this kind of context, fintech is absolutely critical. So how do we address this? If we ignore fintech at our peril with this kind of basic economic factors. A lot of us don't understand fintech. I'm not an expert, but I know enough to be able to work on this, is to say, this we already have. We are working on paying for goods and services, which fintech addresses, moving money from now to the future, which is saving money and investing, moving money from the future and bringing it back to us, which is credit, and finally managing risk. This is the total framework of fintech as I understand it. I hope I've done it because I'm here with gurus. Have I done okay here?
Yep. I would say, yeah.
Almost there. Almost there. I can say Oxford actually helped.
We don't like managing risk. That's all.
No, that's right. So this is what fintech is about. I'm trying to demystify fintech because people sort of think it's just some funky thing in blockchain or whatever. No, it's not. It's actually an integrated part of this overall system that is in there. We already launched this a few months ago, so we worked in there, and now we can start a conversation. Mirna, welcome. She is an amazing role model, and I think we'll be sitting here for 20 minutes if I just spoke about you, so thank you for coming here. Mirna, just tell us your story and inspire us for a couple of minutes of how you started in Lebanon and came here.
Thank you, Tariq. Hi, everyone. Before I start with my story, I want to tell you something. My son, I shouldn't talk about that, but anyways, my son is going to university next year, and during the summer, he was doing some internship with a blockchain company in Lebanon. And when you're an entrepreneur, you talk about your company during lunch, dinner, bedtime. It becomes your bedtime story. And now he's at a point where he wants to decide on his, where to go, which university, what to study. And he's so confused. I've never seen someone so confused as this boy, because he's seen, they teach him something in school, and then he sees the world in a different. So then he comes and says, Mama, I like Fintech Galaxy. I want to run this company, but can I do mining in the Galaxy? He wants to do blockchain mining in the Galaxy. So this is how our kids think. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done to the boy? So yeah, we can't keep up with them, and whatever we do, it's always falling short. I'm Lebanese, and just like our friend Miss Prestige, is that your name? I love your family name. So I come from a country, I'm like a country mouse, and I've been through a lot of wars. I mean, there's no war in Lebanon that I haven't survived. So I've survived all these kind of wars, and I studied English literature, so don't ask me how I got here. But anyway.
When she says wars, it's actual wars.
Actual wars. I lost 2 houses, and I actually survived, bombed down and all that. And then I moved to Dubai as a financial journalist. And speaking of education, I've learned in journalism about the banking sector more than I can bet my life, more than any banker out there in the DIFC, because I've reported on in the boom and the bust, the big deals. I've challenged the CEOs, ministers, I mean, you name it. And then, I went to Thomson Reuters. I worked with Reuters and Dow Jones. And then I switched into the business side, where I was heading the public sector. And that's when I realized that, governments are starting to get lost between, regulating and leaving the market to innovate. Banks are accepting the fact that the customer experience is changing and customers are demanding a different kind of banking. Startups are in their own world thinking that they're gonna, demolish banks, which is not the case. VCs are hungry for deals. I mean, the whole ecosystem is completely disconnected. And I thought, okay, maybe I will institutionalize what I do, which is, as a journalist, you connect a lot of people, and provide a platform that actually brings the ecosystem together. And that's what Fintech Galaxy is all about. So we're a crowdsourcing platform. And because I survived wars, the financial inclusion story is very dear to my heart. I've been through a lot of days where I couldn't even have access to my bank or buy anything. And I wanted to work hard, set up this company, and one day I'll put all the charities on the blockchain.
Wonderful.
So that's
Thank
like
you.
my dream.
Well done. Our other guest is Mohammed. Mohammed is he's very cool. I mean, he's one of the coolest dudes in town.
Thank you.
Seriously. And I saw you a few months ago at DTech. I remember that's when I met last year, when I met you first time. Tell us about your company, the fact that you pay your people with Bitcoin, right?
No, actually Dubai coin, which is a currency
Dubai
that
coin,
we
even-
created. So.
Okay, so you don't deal with real money anymore.
No, not really. No.
Brilliant.
So we pay over 20 people that works with me with a currency that we created. So we pay them fake money. Not
Okay.
real money. No, I mean now the whole story is, started. I have a little bit of a banking background and software background, and then I had that gap here, what I call it. So I studied a lot of philosophy, psychology, innovation management, and kind of put it all in a mixture. And I like as well, writing poetry, especially in Arabic, Old Arabic. So it's kind of a mixture of things here and there. And then decided to do a little bit of physics and astronomy, and then a little bit of futuristic studies, as they call them. So right now, I identify as a futurist.
Join the club of two.
Well, yeah. So, there would be a nice course actually in the DIFC Future. So about the future insights
Sure.
in about a couple of weeks. Anyway, so at that time, when I started with the bank, and I was about 22 years old, and I was in a group called the Enterprise Architects.
Right.
And these people are we are a group of 4. 3 of them, the youngest is about 56 years old. So it was a really tough, to keep up or to convince them, because they don't give you anything to work on. You're that kid, coming in and trying to prove yourself to people, just like, yeah, sure, go and bring us some coffee or something. Anyway, so they decided to give me something to keep me occupied. They told me, okay, you know what, we'll create something called the Innovation Lab. We'll put you there. You seem very interested about that. Go and research certain technologies and what is the impact of those technologies on the future of banking.
Yeah.
Very easy task, you do that before breakfast usually. So I went there and started looking into technologies. Blockchain was one of them. This was 2011, 2010. So at the very beginning of Bitcoin, that was the only application. I came up with that recommendation. It's like, okay, you know what, guys, there's this cool technology that's going to change the way banking works. Not only banking, but the way we perceive economy.
Yeah.
And I told them to invest in Bitcoin. Was in 2011 March time. So Bitcoin was about $3 at that time. And
And you must have been seen to be something really, really weird at that point.
Yeah,
in time.
of course. I mean,
and almost arrested, right? Because I got something similar in 2013, where somebody they wanted me to represent them for Bitcoin, and I said, no, come on, I'll be in jail before I know. So
I wasn't. No, they were looking at me as this weird kid. Basically, he was trying to do everything futuristic. I remember Mr. Polanyi was the head of treasury. He was like, Mohammed, I know you're like, you're smart and all, but sometimes you take it too far. Just like play it cool. Come down here. Be on the ground. It's like I'm always in disguise. Because I used to tell him, like, even for people that tells you, the sky is the limit. I hated that phrase, even though it's supposed to be positive. And I say, why is it the limit? I mean, it shouldn't be. It should be just the beginning. And anyways, so they told me, no, it will die in a year or two. And of course it didn't. Bitcoin went all the way up to $20,000.
So you're a multi-billionaire today, right? You're a Bitcoin billionaire?
Anyways.
Moving on.
Moving on. I actually started, emailing the central bank at that time, telling them, hey guys, there's this new thing. Either you should, accept it or regulate it, do something about it. And I got the most interesting reply, actually, which is no reply whatsoever. It's like, why would they reply to me? So then I decided, okay, you know what? I'll do it myself. So it was a journey. I traveled a bit and then worked for Microsoft a little bit, and then decided to start Arabian Chain, and then built the first cryptocurrency out of the Middle East, Dubai Coin, DBIX. So I created a currency, and then I went to the Minister of Economy in Saudi, and I was talking to him about this new thing, and he says, no, but it's not real. And I told him, well, I created a currency, and that currency is in the market now, and it is traded for, it was about 70 cents or like $1, that was the range. It's actually, it has a more value than the real or the dirham. And people are trading that, and now we pay all our employees with that currency. So I created fake money and I pay my people with it. So it's cool. Yeah.
I have to say.
That's very cool.
Thank you.
How much is it trading now?
Right now, I think it's about 1.2 to 1.4.
Don't invest.
$1.
Don't invest.
Don't invest.
It's not going to work. It's not going to be around for 2 years.
Die.
It's not going to be here. Don't invest. Don't invest.
But, Mohammed, for the last 2 minutes, thank you so much, because every single thing we were talking about, you just helped to connect the dots. We spoke about future boardrooms. This is the kind of dude you need on a future boardroom. Do you think he can survive in a normal one? He can't. He has to be put in a little sandbox, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Secondly, you've got all of this sort of interests which go beyond your core education.
Yeah.
Thirdly, which is one of the most important things, is curiosity. You're just like this crazy curious kid who's just you have no idea. Exactly. I can see that. That's the future boardroom. And these are the kinds of people that we really, really need to be able to engage in our boardroom. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Gaurav, what about you, sir? What do you do? You're a tech investor.
Where do I start? So actually, my family, I'm actually second generation fintech entrepreneur.
Okay.
So my father actually started a payment technology company 30 years ago. So based out of Dubai, we've been working with banks and all the institutions that touch the fintech ecosystem for 35 years. So I fell into the fintech world. I did a useless law degree and then decided to come back and work for a French company and then settled into the business. But after 10 years of working in the ecosystem, I realized that there was a lot of scope for change. There was a lot of scope for growth. The earlier figure that you had, the system doesn't work. Today, 80% of all your transactions still happen in cash. You might have Apple Pay, you might have Google Pay, you might have everything. The right use cases still haven't come into the ecosystem where people need technology because it's not being put into play. And you touch on these conversations about the existing dinosaurs of banks not innovating quick enough, and startups who are very eager to innovate but don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And we actually sit right in the middle. We actually sit right in the middle to facilitate that because we have 200 fintech relationships in the region.
Right.
And because we've actually been through the entire ecosystem on the adoption curve of technology, where your earlier slide of even earlier about where you actually presenting the video, one of your slides actually talked about the adoption of technology.
Right.
Firsthand, we've had the ability to see technology moving from an idea into the ecosystem being adopted by consumers.
Right.
Because we've delivered that technology. And we've seen that that time span has actually changed from 5 to 7 years to even 10 to 15 years down to 3 years. And actually, we've introduced technology in the market which has been adopted in 6 months. And I'm talking about brand new technology. Technology that doesn't exist on a global scale, but is so secure, so simple to implement, and so beneficial across every chain in the ecosystem that financial institutions are taking on in even 6 months. There's no 3 years anymore. There's no 7 years.
So here's the ecosystem that we need.
Right.
Meena, are we ready for this? Is this region ready for this? Are the compliance issues there? Is the central bank in the game, or is this just something that we are trying to be really, really cool about?
See, for you to have an ecosystem, you need to have talent, and this region has really amazing talent, right? You need to have the money, liquidity. The region has a lot of liquidity. I mean, we export money into the outside world.
Yeah.
You need to have technology, mobile penetration, and all that. We have it all. You need to have banks. We've got huge banks, and we have a lot of banking systems. But what we don't have, and if you look at the gap between MENA region and the global, during the first half of the year, around $50 billion were invested in fintech. 50, okay? In this part of the world, you barely reach 50 million. So what's keeping this region behind? It's actually the ecosystem is not connected. Okay, so regulators are not working closely with banks and startups to open the market. There are some structural challenges into the system that need to change.
Yeah.
So opening, an app on a phone is not going to change how banking is done, right? And investing, 100 million here and 100 million there won't change it. You've got to have some really big initiatives that cascade from top bottom and bottom up to change the whole, region.
What is your experience in terms of we're about to get our entrepreneurs on board, and you started out as an entrepreneur. What has been your experience in terms of acceptance, in terms of tolerance to failure? You're a rich man, so you have the money, but where does the money come from?
Oh, thank you.
And no, I'm serious. But I meet all these young entrepreneurs, and actually the Dubai Chamber of Commerce did a study, and recently it's been published, where they said for entrepreneurs the number one issue is actually opening a bank account. Number 2 issue is about funding, and number 3 is about having a place to work, which is an ecosystem where they can work with each other to create something, rather than sort of sitting in an office somewhere.
Silos.
What is your experience in that before we get the entrepreneurs on board?
Well, starting with that thing, I will quote a very famous philosopher that says, innovators are gonna innovate, and regulators are gonna hate. So it's not our job as entrepreneurs and innovators to care about regulation. This is not my job. My job is to disrupt, and their job is to follow up and try to contain it in a box.
Right.
Hopefully they can do that fast enough, of course. The other thing is, it depends on the type of startups that you are approaching. Like one of the things that we have today, what we call initial coin offerings, and this is, it comes into the blockchain area, and we are able to fund massive projects without the involvement of any of the existing ecosystem today. So no venture capitals, no investments, no regulators, no whatever. We can do all of that, and it's actually working. But it's scary a little bit because when big money is involved without any regulation.
Isn't ICO a little bit dodgy?
I'll speak about it because I'm speaking about the regulation. It was announced a couple of days back from the SCA here, Security Capital Markets Authority in Abu Dhabi, and they actually came up with an approach towards ICOs, how to regulate them and consider them as securities. And I think it should be done that way. The word has a negative connotation because it was very new. People made a lot of mistakes in that, took advantage of the whole thing. But as a tool, it's a very powerful tool for funding. It's crowdfunding at its best. It's easy. Click a button and you're investing things and sending hundreds of millions of dollars across the world.
Right.
So that is one of the things. We personally didn't face a lot of issues fundraising at the beginning. Most of it we did that ourselves, because we kind of, we engaged in certain activities to kind of generate that money. And instead of asking people for money, we invested money at the beginning to generate money that we can reinvest back and create an ecosystem. But for today's startups, I think it's better than what we were like 3, 4, 5 years ago, because today people are more understanding. I mean, of new ideas. The Fintech Galaxy is one of those. Basically, you're trying to bridge the gap between the startups or the entrepreneurs and the market that actually gonna either invest or use their services.
Yeah.
So the journey is interesting, and it's all about the journey. It's not something that you will do in one day. And I'm sure that the entrepreneurs that will they will share their stories of that, and
Sure.
you will learn from them more.
So there's a good segue, Mohammed. Can we please invite our startups and entrepreneurs, please, to join us?
I mentioned that Fintech Galaxy is a crowdsourcing platform. Now we crowdsource 3 different things. Number 1, we run hackathons and innovation challenges. So we go work with banks, come up with innovation challenges, and then we invite startups to compete and find solutions for these innovation challenges. That could be, using artificial intelligence in treasury or anything like that. And then we work with startups in helping them create their own brand and speak at venues and raise funds and do business development. So we work closely with them. And the third thing, which we are launching on October 31st, is actually the talent crowdsourcing. So we're creating a platform where you can go and buy on-demand time from experts like these. So we are actually, we sit down and we work with startups all the time. We understand them, we know what makes them tick, we know their trouble at home, everything.
Was it an ICO and non-money? No, okay.
We went the traditional route of VCs and
Right.
How dare you insult the crypto king?
Exactly. So we are Sarwa, and what we do is we are an online platform for investment advisory. Basically, I don't know if you're familiar with the term robo-advisors, but that's what we do. We're also a hybrid model, so we don't only rely on technology, but we have also the human element, because we believe that this is truly very important, especially in the region, to always have that personal connection with the clients. And like you just mentioned, we just closed the round of investing with the top VCs from the region, but also we had 500 startups from California.
So funding was the second most difficult thing. Did you have problems opening a bank account?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So that resonated with us actually when you said that this is one of the first issues that startups face. So
I'm actually working with the Chamber of Commerce, and this is one of the key issues that we need to address, is how can we make it simple for people to open a bank account, let alone get on to the next level. Kasha, what about your company, sir?
Before I talk about my company, shall I comment on the point you made about how can we help people open a bank account?
Yes, of course.
Because that is pretty much what we are working on in a nutshell. So the name of the company I'm representing is Money Mall. We are building a product that will help people manage their finance in the most effective way. And that will help solve the issue of thin file, which is what we are talking about. It's not that banks do not want to open a bank account for the consumer, because they cannot make effective underwriting decisions. So how can we help financial institutions to make the best decisions so we can solve the problem of underbanked?
I'm Saika and I'm from Searchy. We're a talent acquisition platform. We launched earlier this year. And we're utilising artificial intelligence in a big way. We created our own avatar, which will look at microfacial analysis and really make a big impact on the hiring side. So we're in 6 countries, and we're looking to disrupt the horrible talent problem that everybody seems to have. And I'm so glad you mentioned people and education, because I was at KHDA earlier today. And I actually want to take away the CV altogether. My goal is to actually give people, give wildcard candidates to companies based on culture, values and needs. and try to sort of really represent people with potential. So right now we're matching on culture, values and needs and skills, but time and time again employers actually need to change the way they're hiring. That's why they're not finding the people.
Brilliant. What an amazing response.
It's very interesting, because I review about 300 to 500 startups a year to look at from an investment point of view. The one thing most of them miss, and I've actually heard all three of them address here, is that they're talking about regional problems. Because what happens is, if you look at the investment or even the startups that happened, the trend over the last 5 years, a lot of people were setting up what were duplicate businesses. They wanted to be another Uber, they wanted to be another Twitter, they wanted to be another Snapchat, in that like. But they never took care of the local demographic or regional issues that would contextualize actual problem solving here. And that's actually really refreshing to hear that the three of them have actually looked at regional issues and addressed them to actually do a problem, because then people like me would say, yes, it's relevant and we want to invest. So I'm not surprised that they're sitting here today. That's fantastic.
Super. She is the chairperson of Abdul Latif Jameel Finance for the region. So she's in Dubai, fresh off the banana boat. She's been here like a week. So
fresh target.
The fresh target, exactly.
Fresh target for you. Yeah.
So, Nilofer, what sort of issues do you have, because you're in the finance space and you've seen a plethora of people here, and how can they engage with an organization like you to help you disrupt or transform and move to the next stage of the work game?
I come from a consumer finance world, mainly the auto finance. Maybe you've heard like Toyota Financial Services, Volkswagen Financial Services. I have worked in all of them for many years. So I think the main stopper in our development is banks. We work through banks. We are not. Some of us are banks in Europe. We have banking license, and some of us do not. So we work with the help of the banks. We reach the customer. The customer comes to auto showrooms. They buy the car. We just answer their credit needs in a second, because we don't use even humans. We know car credit very well, but we want to, like in Turkey, we had this idea to build cooperation, like fintechs, find a fintech platform, and just let the consumer choose his own bank and his account and saving. But the regulation is the number one showstopper everywhere.
So let me throw that back in a different way to a group of people. How can you address her needs, knowing the compliance issues? How can you help to transform and disrupt?
I think going back to what you said,
and,
right?
And blow it up.
Beg for forgiveness later, do first, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the first thing you got to do, correct?
So the thing is, we are working as we speak on a product called Withaq. And Withaq is basically a product that is automating the end-to-end service of issuing what we call sukuk. Sukuk are what we call Islamic bonds, basically. So it's a very heavy legal product, basically, to issue. And it's basically in the terms of financing. How do you finance projects? But it's the same idea. You can use it, to finance a car loan or whatever it is. And the fun thing about it, we don't use banks at all in the middle. So zero banks in there. It's directly you and the consumer, which saves you a lot of cost, a lot of issues there, and brings up the efficiency. And we have that product. We are doing a POC for it with the Court of the Future out of Dubai, because they want to see the legal aspect of it. We're working with Clifford and Chance as well. They're one of the top 5 law firms there to automate the process.
In the world.
Yeah. So they automating the whole process in there. And I think those kind of applications will help companies like Abdul Latif Jameel or any other companies that deal with basically consumers directly to bypass banks. Sorry if anybody from the banking industry. I'm used to be.
No, we saw 90% of the jobs are gone, so game over.
They don't like me at all, actually. Banks. No, seriously, they tell me that to my face.
No, but you can set up you can connect that platform to an alternative credit lending source.
Exactly.
So going back to, there's a startup in Africa called Tala.
Yeah.
And Tala raised $30 million in their second series round, and Chris Saka and all these sorts of people invested. And what they did was they were an automatic scrubbing system that, as a user just launched the app, it automatically scrubbed your profile to give you a credit scoring on their terms that a bank could lend to.
Right.
And on the basis of that, they found that the return on the micro lending that they were doing was so efficient, it was 99% returns. Only 1% of their loans were coming back. They stopped taking money from credit organizations. They raised the 30 million to start funding people on their own. So once you get to a scale, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a Yalla Compare or Compare It For Me or whatever they've changed their names to now.
Yeah.
Creating their own funding of sourcing once they've got to a point for venture capital money to chase them into it. So I think the smart contract way of eliminating the need for a repetitive process to capture a wider audience is on point. Backed by a use case that could then do alternative lending or finance from venture capital or other institutions may present itself to actually just fast track it. But you've got to reach that threshold.
Thank you. Wonderful answer. She has a battle for talent. What do you do? What advice do you give to her through your organization? What should she be doing?
Don't put yourself through it. So basically, we give you access to sourcing, validating. We have a global network of freelance recruiters who source for talent anywhere in the world. They give you the top 5 candidates that have been interviewed by our artificial intelligence, and it's set by your criteria. So you set your culture, your values and needs, and the skills, and she will interview live questions and process all of that data in 10-15 minutes and give you a percentage match. So she will say it's 86%. We just did our first deal with Etihad, and they hired from the first time they interviewed, because we did all the interviewing and everything, presented interviews, from them actually physically interviewing the person themselves. 1 interview, 1 assessment, an offer was made in 1 month. It's the fastest they've ever hired.
Tinder for businesses.
Is
it Tinder for business? That's what it sounds like, right? Just,
I didn't hear that.
that's what it sounds like. It sounds like.
But
That's
that,
compared to this.
No,
Yeah,
but actually,
absolutely.
the question here:
Yeah.
how
I
would
think
you
it works.
teach the machine what skills you're looking for jobs that are not existing, for
Yeah.
skills that we don't know?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so this role with Etihad, brand new department, I didn't even understand the title when it came through, it was this long, right? So we kind of go into the type of qualities they're looking in the person rather than focusing on the skills. They knew that they had to have some kind of data science interest and some kind of understanding of numbers, right, and science. So it's almost like we're moving away. We're focusing more on the potential. They have to have some kind of foundation in something, but 68% of the match was purely on the fact that this person had the potential to develop this whole new department for them.
because the point is extremely relevant, and AI is almost as good, or it's only as good as the quality of data that we put into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So that's the issue number 1. Number 2 is the ethics and the values and the morals are with us, not with an AI. AIs have been, sorry sir? For now, yeah, for now. At least for a while. And with my multiple intelligences, I think we're going to get the lead
An hour
going.
from now, Muhammad will come up with something.
I know. So you got that. Now, what's happening this is happening in the US. Amazon doesn't deliver to a certain place. Banks are not lending in other places. And the AI is making a decision. 86% maybe they are right. But what about those 14%? And that is where the human element comes in. So, how can you just eliminate that human element?
It's a people business. Ultimately, recruitment is a people business. You have to still get a feel for the person in person. What we're doing is cutting down the months. I'm shocked at how long the recruitment process, like there's jobs that have been open for a year, right? So we're cutting down that horrible process where I call it the black hole. It's like the dread, like, oh, I have to hire this person. It's never like, I've never met anyone who says, I love recruiting, I love interviewing. It's almost like they like it when they've identified the person. So we're just trying to get there first. So we're utilizing artificial intelligence right now at that part. Humans are at the beginning and at the end, right? And we're still not replacing. So you know when you get a gut feel when you interview someone, you're like, I get a gut feel there's something that's off here. What we're saying is we don't have to think about it. We give you a whole report of thinking style, working relationships, and how they are in the office.
Here.
So my question is, the AI analyzes the facial expression. What if I'm on my bad day?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it analyzes. Not just that.
It's game over now.
Push the interview to another day.
It's the content.
Actually, in Lebanon, you will find them all looking like you.
I'm actually really imagine this scenario.
But it's number.
Imagine this scenario. We are working on a pilot with the Court of the Future to have AI basically trial people, you know,
Yeah.
to give you a verdict.
Yeah.
Not only to hire or fire, but
do
this is
it.
like to give you a sentence, you know, whether you go 2 to 3 years to jail or not.
Oh wow.
So
But
that would be
actually
Minority
speaking about
report.
Sarwa, I had email conversations with Mark for more than 2 months until finally I said, please,
This is
can
Mark
we meet?
Beer, he's head of the...
No, Mark, my co-founder, my partner.
sorry, big one.
It's Mark Shahan.
Mark
Mark Shahan, he's the co-founder. And I was waiting in the DIFC and waiting for this guy who's taking Sarwa into, you know, and then a kid comes and I was like, sorry, I don't have time for you. I'm waiting for someone called Mark.
Mirna, he's growing a beard now. He looks much.
You're such an ageist. Such an
Because
ageist.
I am wired to meet CEOs who are bankers, ties, I don't know, I mean, like basically. And then this guy, this kid in jeans and
I'm being stereotyped here.
in 5 minutes, he stole my heart. Like the guy is super smart and so human. As much as his product is AI, he's so human.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating, you know, the story, the challenges, what he's doing. He could barely sit. He was like this,
Yeah.
you know. And the whole team, by the way, like Jad and they're all. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Then you go see the bankers. You know, have you met the chief digital officers at banks?
Yeah.
Very.
Okay.
They're great people. If they're watching, we love
They
you.
almost like you guys.
Yeah. How they communicate, I have no idea. With startups.
But again, to add to that, Mirna, we've noticed, so we are a robo-advisory, right? We use technology, we use algorithm to assess the risk profile and the client and so on, and we would recommend based on that. We don't do anything, it's the technology all through. But then we noticed that people are still very reluctant to deal with technology, right? They want this human interaction, they want that human face. So that's why now we're actually increasing the number of our financial advisors, because every time we have a client, they're like, okay, great, but who can I talk to? What if something happens? Can I pick up the phone? Like they need, it's very difficult right now to get to that point where we're just saying, okay, artificial learning or intelligence or whatever you want to learn, it's going to take it all and that's it, everything's fixed. People need to still interact with people.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
now.
good to kind of combine both and rely on technology when it comes to solving certain issues, but adding that human element is always needed.
Okay, that would be really great. I mean, we are working on something called hypercloud.
Yeah.
Hypercloud is basically a virtual influencer. It's a persona that sits on the internet. It doesn't have an actual existence. And you look at it and you feel like it's an actual human being. You follow it on Instagram. It has millions of followers. It's advocates for brands. It has its own, like, I don't know, she's a DJ. We have her.
Don't teach Brian this one because
No,
then
we
it should
will.
be dangerous with this.
Actually, it is actually the first virtual influencer after the MENA region, and I think linking her up with an AI at the end could help her, be more personal.
Indeed. So, Celeste, you have a question? Yes. Can you speak up, please? Yeah. No, you can sit, but you can speak up.
My question is, I can rely on AI for recruiting first. I'm sure that will be the right first. How can you judge the chemistry? Because I'm going to work this first.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
I try to understand it. Tell you this person, I think the woman, the eyes, that if it's true or not, that's why the person is this, they
Yeah.
doing this. So this chemistry.
Yeah.
I would not give up. The
Yeah, no.
I need to see this person and see the energy or the aura. I don't want to sound refined. That's the basic, but I think it's missing. How do you?
I understand your point, and I'll tell you how far away I was from AI. 2 years ago, I remember hearing something in San Francisco about what was happening with tech and AI and all of this. I said it will never touch recruitment. It will never touch our industry, never touch my industry, because I go and meet my clients, I go and meet my candidates, I go and screen. I can't replace that. Now I'm watching a video back of someone in LA who's doing an interview in the morning, and one of the questions is, if you're president for the day, what would you do? Where would you travel? You see the buzz. You see how they're passionate about answering. The interview is live. You can kind of gauge something. and then you still meet them. We're not replacing the need to meet, and you put them through your process. Instead of doing 4 interviews, you probably do 1 or 2.
So can I build a compromise?
Yeah.
My colleague, Jenny Young, she's working on holoportation. So effectively, you can send a hologram to do the interview rather than going in individually. So you are sort of not getting the chemistry, but at least you're getting the interview. I mean, so that's probably the next level of development. Kashav, you've been very silent. Can you?
Yeah.
You're saying now, what the hell are these dudes up to, right?
Right, so let me tell you a story. So I've started using AI, machine learning, NLP, deep learning, you can name it, few years back. And one thing I've learned, if you use the technology in the right portion, at the right place, that's when you get the best value out of it. So we do use machine learning, we use AI and all that fancy jargon, but in a different way. So our product is pretty simple. And in 15 years working with 6 banks, starting few businesses, what I've learned, if you keep things simple,
Yeah.
this is when you increase the probability of success. So that's what I would say. I think use the technology at the right place, in the right portion.
Super. Final couple of questions. Well done. Yeah. So we need to start finding that balance in some way. Last couple of questions, and then we can start wrapping up. Yes, Rehan.
I'm not against technology, artificial intelligence, and all this disruption.
Yeah.
But the thing is, all I hear all the time, we talk about solutions, we talk about replacing jobs, we talk about, basically sacking people. So what is the strategy here? What's the alternative for these jobs to be replaced, people losing jobs? So what do we have to replace? The strategy.
Upskilling.
I think first of all, you're not going to see an eradication of jobs overnight. You're going to see a gradual erosion. Nothing happens in the blink of an eye. You know, as technology, as quick as it can be made or adopted, there's an adoption point which happens. And what will happen is certain jobs in certain industries will erode. So if I'm a lawyer, doing a mutual NDA will become automated as a contract because it's actually quite a simplified process and AI can do a replicant of that job. But a lawyer's job will not disappear overnight.
Yeah.
So maybe his skill set from doing NDAs can be concentrated on doing other jobs as well. So maybe he might focus on a core while the generic parts of his jobs will erode away. So he can develop different skill sets. But even every industry has its own erosion points and retooling points. So some people have to gradually learn sets quicker than others, and that's where we'll have to focus on. So that's what will happen is people will have to adjust to their skill sets, and I think there's enough of a roadmap over the years that you'll be able to see what skill sets you need to focus on that will filter back down into different education classrooms, different vocational sets which we'll focus on. I think you'll probably see the number of college graduates dipping after a certain point if they're not in a specialized field, because they'll actually become entrepreneurs who will hire people who want these skill sets. So AI is not, Skynet's not coming overnight.
No.
It is coming, much like people thought that cryptocurrency would replace everybody. It's not replacing it overnight, but it's never going to go away, right? It's evolved into, say, for example, stablecoin. Stablecoin in places like Turkey is becoming extremely relevant because of the fluctuation in currency. So each place has a start and an evolution, but it's coming, but it's not panic time just yet.
Actually, a quick comment on that. I work with a couple of universities in the region, advising them in creating new curriculums, basically new degrees.
Yeah.
And this is part of being involved so much in whatever happening with technologies, different technologies, and what they're doing to the job market overall. And as you see it, I mean, it's always a balance. Whatever you destroy, you are creating something new, and that something new will need people to understand how to operate that.
Correct.
We are eliminating the things that don't really require much of a human level interaction. I mean, we as people, we have that unique element basically that we can bring to the game. AI could make most of the math out, but to make that sensible decision at the end, you need that educated person to make that. The other thing is, for example, smart contracts. Now we work, as I said, with the court of the future and with lawyers with us, and they're not scared of losing their jobs completely because they will shift from just being a normal attorney or a lawyer into being this coder lawyer, where they actually create that code into those smart contracts.
I started with this right at the beginning. We're going through this transition decade. So between now and 2030, there's going to be massive transition and transformation. A lot of people will lose their jobs, but we need to retrain. The only difference between the past and now is speed. So we need to work faster, we need to respond quicker, we need to adapt immediately, we need to pivot very, very fast, and then become more and more and more human. So I'll end,
Let me
yes,
say
yes,
something.
yes ma'am.
Okay, when we started, I posed one question. Why is this region not catching up with the global tide?
Yeah.
And I want all of us to use the Walt Disney kind of strategy where you go really crazy with your mind, okay? So let's assume that we are the board, okay, of the MENA, which is a company. So MENA region is a company and we are the board of directors. So you've got the startups, you've got the investors, you've got the crazy dudes who I don't know what they do. You've got the HR, you've got the bankers, you've got the regulators here because we're keeping everyone under control. What needs to be done? I mean, someone please give me some idea because I keep going in circles. What needs to be done?
I think it's coming. I think the region is on the right track, right? We have more incubators, more accelerators. We're working, so we are actually regulated. We got the license and now we're graduating from the license. So even the regulators, imagine not you, but the real ones, or the ones out there. The old ones, the traditional ones. They're actually now starting to realize they need to work with all these startups, with all these disruptive industries to actually get there, because you can't inhibit growth, right? You have to enable it and you have to work closely with them. So it's slowly getting, we are almost 10 years behind the rest of the world around that time, but it's getting there, but I think we need more crazy dudes.
I don't think we are 10 years behind from a technology innovation point of view.
Not a technology, but from a lot of other
we
areas.
have done stuff here. It's some of them it's not implemented out there yet. For example, the shifting of the whole Atlantis in Jumeirah. We were the first to shift them into a full cashless environment with Lucid Pay and blockchain. They are the first and only hotel in the world that actually operating or will be operating fully cashless.
Yep.
But I understand that we are getting there from the regulatory perspective and maybe from the investment perspective as well. And so community is being, as you said, it's being with incubation and stuff. For investors, and this is I think the main focus why people are not investing, I think it's a lack of awareness. They are used to traditional investments.
Yes.
If I come to somebody and I pitch them this idea of real estate, building, whatever it is, they will fund me with $100 million.
Overnight.
Overnight. and believe me, we've dealt with that and it happens. But come to them, we are creating this kind of new thing, or it's a startup thing, and it's risky. Still, they don't really get that. So we need to build that awareness.
Yes.
We need to reach those people,
So
investors,
basically,
educate them.
They are both left high.
Yeah.
So did you have the similar experience, or because Sarwa was the first one were on board?
Yeah, Moneymal is just joining the cohort, right?
Can I share my experience?
Or,
It's awesome.
But be honest, not because we're
No,
in the
I'm
DRC.
telling you
and
the honest
say
story.
all this.
So I'm from UK. So I've seen a different part of the world in terms of how the government organization operates, how the SMEs and the whole economy. So I had my doubt before starting my venture in this region. A few months back, I applied to the IFC, and they said, you got an amazing concept and you want to do something good, so come along. So they've accepted, and now they said they're going to open up the door for like 22 banks. They're going to let me contact the bureau. And guess what? The recent story, I got in touch with this lady over the weekend for a different matter, and she said, come along to this platform and tell your story. Now, this is what we're talking about, the support system.
Yeah, community is good.
So I'd like to frame both of their things
Yeah.
into context. When did Silicon Valley actually become Silicon Valley? In the 50s and 60s?
Yeah.
They've got a 50 to 60 year head start.
Sure.
We're catching up much faster in this region.
Yep.
Because the thing is, it's very fashionable to say that things aren't happening here, but credit to some people and the futurists out here who are perpetuating the cycle, like yourselves and yourself, to see things moving forward at pace. Otherwise, it might not be as quick, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's going to catch up maybe in 10, 15 years. I mean, how old is Kareem as a company?
Yeah.
And it's not even had an exit yet.
Yeah.
I mean, Souk.com was the first major exit. Maktub, I think, with Yahoo was the first real exit, which no one had even heard about.
Yeah, 10 years
So
ago.
the journey is really starting, but it's going to speed up. And with things like the UAE and Saudi and everything that's happening in Lebanon, Jordan, coming together,
Yeah.
we're on the right path.
Final word.
I I don't know if I want to finish with this, but the only difference will be in Silicon Valley you have pictures of how Google started, how Apple started in the garage. In Dubai it will be in a villa on the palm. That's probably the only, that's why it's been so hard for innovation. So
That's so true.
I'm
And-
so happy that the accelerators are starting and everything.
The
'cause
accelerator
they make
DIST Hive, I mean, by the time he's doing something good, the consultants would be selling to you and they'll be selling real estate to you, right? So there you go.
You're building your money more.
Absolutely. So,
Actually, D-Tech is doing an amazing job as well. Well
Yeah.
done.
brilliant.
Yeah,
Big hand
yeah.
to D-Tech, yeah.
We're all actually based out of D-Tech. I mean,
Yeah,
at least
D-Tech
we're too
based.
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Out
To
of-
be anywhere else, yeah. Exactly.
The only place that will take us in. Thank you.
Super. So thank you very much for this discussion, and I will end with what we started with. We've got technology, but where's my heart? The future, ladies and gentlemen, is about heart. The future is about trust, ethics, values, and empathy. This is the kind of thing that if we lose track of this and get lost in the noise and the whole process, we are, it's finished for us, effectively.
Yeah.
For the AI is not, I mean, we as human beings are not the leaders of the world because we're the fastest, biggest, or the strongest, but because we're the smartest. And if we start giving away that lead or smartness, that is really game over for us. And AI is a completely different conversation. But at this point in time, it's even more important to actually build heart, build our mind, build our thinking and our intelligence over and above and be more human as opposed to more technical. And I think we really need to tilt the other way a little bit before we come back to the middle, to that balance. So on that note, I would say these are the pillars, this is the future, this is how we need to think, and this is how a lot of you guys are thinking. I congratulate the startups because I am an advanced startup myself, and I know the pain and I know the fun. So kudos to you. Thank you for you to support us. Thank you for you to inspire us with crazy shit. Sorry. And thank you to the audience who stuck it out, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Big hand for these people.